Leslie, for just a moment, I thought your Christmas tree had the largest on top of the tree decoration I've ever seen. That's fantastic. I thought you had a giant moose on the top of your Christmas tree, which would have been really great. We got lots of people rolling in. I'm going to give us 2 minutes. Everybody say hello to Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. I just personally encourage Sarah Haney from Foundation Title to join us. Thank you, Sarah.
I will enjoy it though, also.
I also love how many of you have your cameras on. It's fantastic. I'm gonna kick off by sharing with you guys. We have an advisory board that meets. It's been meeting once a year. It's now going to meet in the future once a quarter. And this Monday morning, we met for the final time this year. Got some great feedback from a couple of people on the advisory board about wanting to hear more of this call be about market updates, like information about what's happening in the inventory, interest rates, days on market, things like that. And I was all excited to just dive right in and make this whole call about that this week. And then by the end of the day, the news changed a little bit. So I promise that's coming next Wednesday. We will be all inventory, interest rates, days on market, all that fun stuff. So there it is. Okay, shout out to Silva. For those of you sitting at your desk with your camera off, I just want to point out that Silva right now in roughly 15-degree weather is riding her bike on this Google video call with her video on. That is fantastic. I absolutely love that. Okay, well, good morning. I think we're gonna split this call. My goal is to split this call in half, and the first half of this will be me sharing some information. I'm actually gonna go over a timeline, and I literally have drawn it out because for those of you like me that think visually, I think it might be helpful to see some imagery of like the breakdown of what exactly the news was that came out on Monday, like what exactly happened. And then the second half is going to be for questions. And hey, everything's fair game. Whatever questions you have, look forward to attempting to tackle those. Feel free, if anything I say during the first half of the call brings up a question for you, drop it into the chat. So halfway through, I'll start by going to the chat, and if I haven't hit on those items, I'll address them, and then we'll have some time for discussion. If you're able to unmute yourself and ask questions that way, that's great too. Cool? So I'm going to start by sharing. This is just a recap of what I sent out on Monday night. And look, I know this is really big news. But I actually think there's quite a bit of misconception in the marketplace still of what actually happened. And there's two really key items that I think if you don't catch anything else, these are the two things that I think are critical to understand. Everything else after these two things is context and explanation and nuance about how we arrive at those two things. Okay. So after the two things, it might be the more kind of information junkies or curiosity. Number one, we are still 100% locally owned and operated. Nothing changed about your company's ownership. Nothing changed about your brokerage's ownership. We are the same group of owners, the same staff, excited as ever to be here for you. One of the things we're going to hit on when I'm going to pull up the a bit of information that Compass presented on their investor call Monday evening. And I'm going to highlight that I actually think it's really cool that in their conversation about the purchase, Compass highlighted the importance to them of the fact that the @Properties and Christie's network has a bunch of locally owned and operated companies, which Compass has none of. So that is still us. Nothing changed about that. Second thing, this acquisition does not change your brand or technology in any way. So the two companies are committed to operating independently of each other. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means. But to be clear, you are not a Compass agent. You are not in the same brokerage as any Compass agents. You're in the same brokerage as several former Compass agents. But we will continue to have proprietary access to platform and the @Properties brand. Compass agents will continue to have proprietary access to the Compass tech stack and the Compass brand. Okay, so if you don't catch anything else, I think it's those two things. Nothing changed about your company's ownership or staff, and nothing changes about your brand or technology. Okay. Again, if I say anything that you're like, wait, what? Drop a question into the chat. I'm gonna do my best to revisit those. So I'm gonna send out a couple things later that, if you're interested, I think it's really good information, and they're both connected to the investor call that Compass did on Monday evening. So some of what I think caused a little bit of confusion on this is that Compass is a publicly traded company. So anybody in the world at any moment in time could buy a stake in Compass Real Estate. Because of that, this transaction had to happen very secretively. So not only did we not know about it, like I learned about it at the same time many of you did. Matter of fact, I was at a meeting and then driving. I had 2 missed calls from local Compass agents that are friends of mine before I saw the email about what had happened. But the circle was very, very tight. Even the majority of the @Properties leadership in Chicago did not know about the transaction because of SEC laws about insider trading. So when the news broke, within about 2 hours, all the emails went out, all the real estate publications, and a couple bigger publications, Wall Street Journal, those sorts of things, had the news out before 5 o'clock. Compass did an investor call that was about 45 minutes where their CEO and CFO went over a summary of the transaction, how it was working, why they're doing it. And then they took questions, which if you're, this is a term of endearment for me, by the way. If you're an industry nerd like I am, and you just kind of love all the details of that, I think it'd be really interesting to listen to the call. And it's public information. Again, they're publicly traded. They're obligated to present all of this information. So I will send out a link to the call later. I will send out the slide deck that they presented later with the recording of this call. But I wanted to give you that context because I'm going to share my screen and go to the 10th slide in that slide deck that references, they kind of have this like quadrant of why are we doing this? And I think this is something that's really interesting about this whole deal. So this is what I was referencing a moment ago. Compass and EXP are 2 relatively new players in the real estate industry. They're relatively new because our industry is hundreds of years old. And in that scale, they're both quite new. And they are different types of entities than any brokerage was prior to them. There were certainly national and global brands prior to Compass and EXP. there were not national and global brokerages. Okay, so for this slide to make sense, I'm going to try to explain what's the difference between a national brand and a national brokerage. Well, a national brand has existed for a long time. RE/MAX probably could stake the claim to being the first national brand. In the 1990s, they exploded the franchise model. And all of a sudden, there's this brand that's recognizable all over the United States, and then eventually around the world. Keller Williams, probably the second to that game in terms of national recognition of a brand name. The difference, though, is that as RE/MAX was growing in the 1990s, while they were a national brand, they were not a national brokerage. The average size of a RE/MAX company in the 1990s was about 25 people. I'll repeat that. The average size of a RE/MAX company was about 25 people, meaning the average size of the brokerage that agent was in is 25 people, hyper-local, locally owned and operated. They had affiliated with a recognizable brand around the country, and they're sharing some technology tools, some networks. Like, that's the franchise model that had existed for quite some time. Much more recently than that, eXp and Compass enter the marketplace and become truly global brokerages. So Compass is a brokerage. They do not have local ownership. They have local staff, right? They are one global company, publicly traded. And if you are a Compass agent in California or a Compass agent in New York City, you are a member of the same brokerage, not just the same brand or network. Same thing's true at eXp. Those two companies have had, it's undeniable, they've had a huge impact on the industry. They have, in my opinion, they've managed to change at least slightly what the concept of a brokerage might be, right? So they've opened up that possibility. But what that means is that currently, Compass doesn't own or have any interest or connection to a locally owned brokerage model. Okay, that is the significant majority of the brokerages still. In MyBor, there's 2,000 brokerages that are members of MyBor. There's even more that are members of IRMLS, and the majority of those are smaller than 10 people. And even in MyBor,
give me a second.
Biggest brokerage in our marketplace in the state of Indiana, IRMLS and MyBor is FC Tucker. They're a very large brokerage, but in scale, in comparison to Compass and eXp, they're an incredibly small fraction of the size. Okay. So I'm now going to share this, but this is the summary slide kind of about the why to the transaction. And I think this is pretty interesting. Can y'all see a slide there? There we go. Can you see it? I'm going to zoom in here. The top left, number one reason, adds high margin and quote unquote sticky franchise revenue stream to P&L. Adds high margin and sticky franchise revenue stream to P&L. I'm going to stop my screen share and chat about that for a minute. So how they've described that is the limitation to this point of Compass's growth has been a lack of stickiness in a marketplace. They're able to generate revenue. I think everybody kind of understands how Compass comes into a marketplace, how they acquire market share, which is what they do. But then they've had experiences in pretty much every marketplace where they've gone, where 2 and 3 years later, they start to lose market share as non-competes expire. And so they are stating one of the reasons that they have done this acquisition is they want to be a part of a model that has local ownership, therefore stickier revenue for them. I'm going to share a graphic that I think helps to put some context on why that is. But I just thought it'd be good before I dove into that graphic to highlight that's a really relevant factor to this. And I think it comes into play in terms of not just why Compass is doing this, but what might that say about the brands going into the future? Okay. I imagine there's some questions at this point in time, but I bet I'm going to hit on a couple of these. So I'm not going to stop yet. I'm about to share my screen and go over this timeline. And when I open this PDF, don't be overwhelmed by the amount of information on it. I'm going to send it out later. Happy to take questions on it. And it works from left to right. It's a timeline of some app properties history and some of our history merged together. And it's all the way on the right of this PDF is a visual of what is happening right now that I think will help to clarify for some of you, like, what does this mean and what does this not mean? I think this will be helpful, but I bet there's going to be a lot of questions about it. And well, yeah, let me just get to it. I'm going to share. Okay. You'll see that. Bonus points. I was talking about this with the staff, and as I was drawing this up, I could not stop thinking about the cartoon from the 1990s called Picture Pages. Please tell me that some of you watched Picture Pages as a kid. I'm getting at least 2 yeses, which I had 3. Thank you. I love that. Yeah, awesome. If I was cool enough, I would have done this like Picture Pages and played the theme song. So I'm so sorry that I was not able to pull that off. Okay, start with me over on the left. The goal here is to understand the farthest right column. But to understand that fully, I think you got to track a minute with the other 4 columns. Okay. In 2000, At Properties, founded in Chicago as a brokerage owned by 2 realtors in downtown Chicago, Mike Golden and Thad Wong. They were both very successful realtors at a different company. They went out on their own and founded At Properties in 2000. Fast forward 17 years, they are still a 1-market brokerage, but they are the #1 market share company in Chicago. Stacy, I'm sorry. I have to hit pause. Stacy is trolling me and saying that I should have a graphic design degree, but I'm just going to say thank you, Stacy. I agree. So At Properties in those 17 years remains a 1-market company, but they become the #1 market share company in Chicago. That was an unprecedented rise to #1 market share because in my research, I've never been able to find an example of an independent, non-legacy brokerage that grew to #1 market share in a market like Chicago. In every other marketplace, every big major marketplace in our country, the #1 market share company was either affiliated to a national network or a legacy company. In Indiana, this is FC Tucker, right? They're 105, 6 years old. That was the norm. To be a 1-market independent in a market like Chicago and rise to #1 market share really was a thing of its own. I was a broker owner starting in 2011. They're a Midwest company. A very good friend of mine from my hometown has been a realtor there for 15 years. So like they were definitely on the radar as like a holy cow, what are they doing? But that I think is an important component to understanding what happens Monday. So in 2018, That company, still owned by Mike Golden and Thad Wong, sells a majority interest in the company to a private equity company called Quad C, based in North Carolina. The intention of that sale was they wanted to figure out a way to grow outside of the Chicago marketplace. And by Chicago marketplace, like, to be fair, they were in Northwest Indiana, Southwest Michigan, and Wisconsin. They were in all the greater Chicagoland, but that was the only market they were in. Okay. So they sell a majority interest to Quad C in order to bring a bunch of capital into the company to help them grow nationally. This is like Shark Tank. For any of you that watch Shark Tank, it's the person that's going into Shark Tank that says, I have a fantastic product, good company, I'm profitable, but I want to try to grow bigger and I need capital to do that. And I don't want to take on a bunch of debt. I'm willing to bring on a partner to sell a percentage of the company to bring money in to grow. That's what they did in 2018. In 2019, it's where the companies start to merge. We were, up until the very beginning of 2019, we were Nottingham Realty Group. We rebranded in the first quarter of 2019 as Platt Collective. That same year, Rex and I traveled to Chicago and visited with the At Properties CEO, Thad Wong, for the possibility of buying Platform as a standalone product. They floated out into the industry the possibility of packaging their technology and selling it, not exclusive rights, but essentially allowing independent brokerages around the country to use their technology. Fascinating conversation. We were impressed by the tech, but they decided not to sell the product in that way. During that same time frame, At acquired two relatively good-sized brokerages, one called Ainsley in Atlanta, one called Nest on the East Coast. In 2020, At Properties launches an affiliate program. So up until then, their growth nationally had been to buy brokerages, which they bought two. In 2020, they launched an affiliate program, which Nest kind of helped them do. And over the course of about 18 months, 2 years, they brought on franchises. So they franchised with independent brokerages in Detroit, Indianapolis, Wisconsin, Dallas, and DC. Now, in each of those marketplaces, each of those have expanded. So Detroit is really now Eastern Michigan. Indy now includes our merger with Rise Real Estate on the west side, the Lafayette office, the Evansville office. Wisconsin is now two different independent offices. Dallas has grown into Austin, and DC is actually the largest affiliate, formerly Arla. They still go by Arla At Properties, and they're essentially in 5 or 6 marketplaces in the DC area. Okay, all that happened over the course of about a year and a half, 2 years. Then in November of 21, At Properties acquires the Christie's Real Estate Network. So Christie's is a fairly large global franchise company. Again, not like Compass, more like Remax Keller Williams, where they have independent broker owners that have affiliated with Christie's all over the world. At bought that brand and network in November of 21. Okay. I'm not going to take any questions quite yet, but this column on the right, this is my visual of what happens in the first quarter of next year. So the news came out on Monday, but again, a publicly traded company, they can't just go and make an acquisition like this. For example, the SEC has to approve the purchase. That makes sense. So in other words, it was announced Monday. The two parties have agreed on the deal, but there's actually quite a few things that have to happen and get approved for the deal to take place. It's projected to happen at some point in the first quarter of next year. So that's why I have a likely 2025 here. So as of right now in 2024, there is a combination of Quad C, the private equity company, in North Carolina, Mike Golden and Thad Wong. They own the company called At Properties. As of today, that's still true. Us, you see where we are. You are here. Nottingham Realty Group doing business as At Properties of Central Indiana. We have a license agreement with At Properties, which is the company based in Chicago that's owned by Quad C, Mike and Thad. That licensing agreement is an exchange of us giving them money, them giving us a package of things, most notably technology, branding, relocation services, all the things we think about with our affiliation to Chicago. Okay. That's what exists today. What will happen in the first quarter of 2025, there at the bottom, is that Quad C, Mike Golden, and Thad Wong are selling their ownership of At Properties to Compass. Compass will now own that company. It will still be run by the same team of people. So Mike Golden, Thad Wong, Kevin Manek, Amy Core, Natasha, John. You don't know most of those people. Some of you do. That entity will still operate independently. It will run as it's been running, but it won't be owned by the combination of Quad C, Mike Golden, and Thad Wong. It'll be owned by Compass. I think the most important thing in this visual is that the same licensing agreement exists with the same company. So we're still over there on the right. We're still Nottingham Realty Group doing business as At Properties of Central Indiana. We have the same licensing agreement with the same company that we had it in 2024. That company is owned by a different entity. I think the column on the right, to me anyway, and for those of you who are visual thinkers, I think that column helps to illustrate those two key items about what has happened in the transaction or what has not happened in the transaction. That nothing changed about the ownership in our company, and that nothing changes about the operation, branding, technology of At Properties that we have the license agreement with. I think I'm going to pull that visual back up in a moment, but I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to start with the chat. A couple of you, I love it. There's actually no questions in the chat. A few of you have raised your hands, but I'm going to take some questions here in a moment. I'm going to circle back to Stacy's compliment. Thank you, Stacy. Minna, I'm assuming Pour One Out was for Plaque Collective. I'm with you. Love it. Okay. How do I feel like for those of you that raised your hand, I saw that, but I don't seem to be able to access who raised their hands. Like that went away. Okay, Lee, great question. Lee said, how long is our licensing agreement with that? I got asked this question yesterday, and y'all, I'm going to answer it the best that I can. The franchise agreement we have with At Properties has a confidentiality clause. That there's certain things in the agreement that I'm not at liberty to share specifically. However, Compass did us a favor on this. In their earnings call, that's public information, they referenced the average length of the franchise agreements that they acquired. And they said the average length of the franchise agreements is 6.7 years left. This would be the only thing that I think our company is really close to being average on. I think everything else we're way above average. On that one, we're real close to average. Emily, what's your question?
Hi. Can you?
Yeah. Wait, I don't hear you.
Oh, here. Hi.
There
It's
we
not
go.
Silva. It's just. Guys, so much technology is happening. Okay. I think the question that I have is related to competitive edge in terms of technology and Christie's. So do we have any idea if the tech stack from AT will then be made available to Compass agents, or if there will be like reciprocity with that? Because I think that was one of the big things that we had as kind of an advantage, is we had our own proprietary tech. So now if ownership's taking over, what might that look like? And I think the other thing too is we as an affiliate don't necessarily have a direct relationship with Christie's, but will that impact how Compass, local Indianapolis Compass agents will have access to Christie's now?
Both great questions. I have an answer for you on both of them. My answer on the first one is more concrete than my answer on the second one. Both Compass and AT have emphasized that the terms of this transaction keep both companies' technology and branding in a silo, separate from each other, and that agents in each company will not have access to the technology and branding of the other company. And I've actually already seen two illustrations of this in the last 24 hours, one from each company. AT Properties has sent out communication to their Chicago agents saying, hey, to be very clear, you are not licensed to use the Compass logo, not even in creating a social media post. That you're not allowed to do that. The actual transaction hasn't happened, but they're still not going to be allowed to do that. Second, Compass did an all company video call yesterday. They had a 10 a.m. Zoom call. I did not sneak into the Zoom call, but I was able to chat with a couple of Compass agents here locally yesterday. They're friends of mine. And I thought this was really interesting. In that call, a Compass agent who used to be an AT Properties agent, this is not in Indianapolis, this is in a different marketplace, asked Robert Refkin, why are we not able to access Platform? This particular agent said, I used to use Platform. I'm a little biased, but I agree with them. They said, I like it better than Compass's tech. Why can't I access it? And he gave reported to me a very clear answer of saying, because they're different companies. They will stay in their silos. You will not be able to access their technology. They will not be able to access your technology. They're proprietary and they need to stay that way. Now, realistically, is any company in our marketplace able to see and learn from any other company's technology? Yes. You guys, I promise you, if AT or Compass or EXP or Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker or Remax, it doesn't matter. If a major company in our marketplace has a piece of technology that is truly unique, everyone's going to be able to see it. And then the race, if they think it's really good, the race to emulate it will happen. So yes, that will occur. My view of that is that it already occurs, not just between these two companies. This is why technology tends to have a short lifespan as a true differentiator. If tech is a true differentiator, then within a couple of years, everybody catches up. Okay. Emily, your second question. Great one about Christie's. Look, it's outside of our control, so I can't speak with total confidence on this. But I do not believe there will be a Christie's affiliate in Indianapolis. There's no plans for that. I don't see that changing. But the long-term answer, Emily, is I don't know. There could have been a Christie's affiliate here 5 years ago before At bought the brand. There could have been one 3 years ago. There could be one in 3 years. So that is a possibility. I don't believe it's in the works or is likely to happen. Johanna, good question. She says, sounds like a lot of things are not changing. Can you talk at all about any of the things that will change? I think in the short run, the only thing changing is a momentary perception. And I think when the dust settles, that fades. When the brands and operations of these companies don't change, this news fades very quickly. That's my anticipation. So I think in the short run is perception for a moment. In the longer run, I think it's fair to say this could cause some changes in the long run. My view of this is the entity that we have a licensing agreement with that provides technology to us was owned by a private equity company that's not in the real estate business. Now it's owned by the largest real estate business in the world. If I look at that, the real estate brokerage in the world, I look at that and say, yeah, there's some trade-offs potentially in the long run, but I think it's as likely that it's good news for the tech stack, but I don't know what changes. And I don't think anybody does, to be honest. I don't even think they know. What they've said is their intention is to operate the two companies very independently, and that the merger is about accessing a different type of real estate brokerage. So I think the more concrete answer to that is the short run, little to none changes. In the long run, it's tough to say, but I think there could be some advantages in the tech side. Okay, yeah, Alex, what's your advice on how we combat a competitive listing or buyer situation versus a Compass agent when they say something like, well, we own at so, ... Yeah, a couple thoughts. One, I would say you and I know that clients don't hire brokerages, clients hire realtors. So my best advice is that a vast majority of consumers are more concerned with you and your skill and your value than they are your company. We exist to help you. You exist to help them. Having said that, I would highlight the reason that Compass, the number one, go to that quadrant that I referenced. You may not pull up a slide deck in your listing presentation from the Compass investor call. I mean, verbally reference the stated reason that Compass acquired At Properties and Christie's was that they saw value in locally owned and operated businesses. Hammer on that. That would be my advice. Carissa says, if things get wonky with Compass, is there a world where Nottingham Realty might ever choose to vacate the affiliate agreement? Yeah, good question. I mean, I think generally, where questions start with, is there a world where? Generally, my answer is going to honestly be open-ended and say, I don't know what years and years and years down the road holds. I was sharing with somebody yesterday. I don't mean to be trite with this, but there was a lot of things that we can't predict as of Monday morning. Does that make sense? Like as of Monday morning, before this news broke, there are so many things 5, 7, 10 years down the road. The rate of change in our world and in our industry specifically is so fast that I think it's the job of a brokerage to constantly pay attention. And while we make long range plans and we think long range, attempting to predict what a company looks like in 5 years, in my opinion, at this point in our industry, is bad energy. Like it's a waste of energy because there's so many variables that you don't understand. So I think there's just an honest answer is there's a world in which a lot of things can happen our job is to pay attention and to constantly evaluate what puts our agents in the best position. Now, to answer more specifically, Carissa, the nature of the licensing agreement is that both parties are obligated to deliver their end until that agreement expires. So I suppose when you say vacate, either party to vacate that agreement would need to have a contractual reason to do it, which I don't envision occurring. But there's a reason for both parties why it's not an indefinite agreement. So I hope that's helpful. Jenny says, even though we don't have an affiliate directly with Christie's, is there any path to network better with them? Can we send them a listing or tap into that network in some way? Yeah, it's a good question. The answer currently is there is not a great way. And I don't love that. I think there should be. I think there should be a better way to do this nationally. But it's fairly limited. And I don't think it's helpful. So prior to this, that was a running conversation that I've had with Kevin Van Eck with that. Kevin runs the affiliate program. Natalie on their staff runs the Christie's affiliate network. I know both of them quite well. So my hope would be eventually, yes. That is not the case currently. Phil says, with clients and investors, external messaging is really important to me. I've seen two different narratives already passed around on social media. Number one, the language I have seen from Compass agents at properties, welcome to the Compass family. Two, the messaging from at corporate has been that we are joining forces, but keeping our branding and operations completely separate. Could at Indy put together a 2 to 3 sentence summary so we can be united and concise if when asked? Thank you, Phil. That is great. The answer is yes. We're actually going to do a little bit more than that. This Friday, our staff leadership and all of our partners are going to be filming short videos, social media content that any of y'all can share. We're going to be putting them out on our company channel as well as our channel. The intention of those is to highlight the passion and value of being locally owned. I think those could pair nicely with a 2-sentence summary about what has happened. But yeah, Phil, thank you. In the summary that gets sent out with this call, I'll include like a truncated version of those 2 key items. Callie, I understand there was some money exchanged, but who has all hands on the steering wheel of decisions now? There was some money exchanged. There was well, not yet. It'll be in the first quarter of 25. There's about 150 million in cash that's going to be exchanged in this deal. And contrary to some of the congratulatory texts that I got on Monday, I promise y'all $0 of that are coming to anyone that lives in Indiana, me included. So just, first of all, I don't think that was Callie's question, but I just wanted to make that clear. Who has all hands on the steering wheel of decisions now? So the way I would explain this, Callie, Mike and Thad, the CEOs of At Property, were contracted in this deal to remain in their roles for a minimum of 3 years. They were not requesting that. Compass required that as a part of the deal. I've talked to key leadership under Mike and Thad, and they believe that that entire team will stay in place. They are still the decision makers in At Properties. Now, for the last 6 years, they are the decision makers in At Properties, but At Properties has had a majority of their interest owned by a private equity company in North Carolina. So essentially, the board of the company has been a private equity company. Now, they participate zero in the operation, the decision making. The one thing they could do is replace the CEOs. not only has Compass indicated they don't want to replace the CEOs, they actually are requiring the CEOs to continue to govern the company. So the human beings making the decisions at corporate don't change. I'm going to answer your question, Callie, in a separate way. Who has all hands on the steering wheel of decisions now? I answered that question based upon at properties corporate. Perhaps what you meant by that question is in your company, in the brokerage that you are a part of that affects your day-to-day business. Who has all hands on the steering wheel of decisions now? Nothing has changed about that. It's me and the partner team. We had those decisions were ours as of Monday morning. They're ours as of today. They will be ours after this deal happens. One of those decisions was to enter into a licensing agreement that we think has been very helpful for us. The primary value to us, side note, in this licensing agreement is that we have always viewed it as something that allows our ownership and staff to spend the highest percentage of our time possible providing human value. Does that make sense? The licensing agreement allows us to, in one transaction, provide best-in-class tools in arenas that are not, by definition, human value, right? So that our ownership and staff can spend the highest percentage of our time being accessible, relational, coaching, training, supporting, even helping you make better use of those tools in a human way. So I hope I answered your question there, Callie. Amy, will our contracts be signed with Nottingham Realty Group DBA as always? Yes, they will. Nothing changes about that because nothing changed about your brokerage. Yeah. Connected to that illustration, like you're still in the same spot. Same people making decisions about what type of contracts you use. Yeah, Chris, a good question. Do we have a sense of whether or not this will be approved? Look, it's not my area of expertise. I guess I just pay attention to stuff like this, so I'm an amateur. But I think typically the publicly traded company doesn't push it out to the media and do an investor call unless their internal legal team is very confident that it will be approved. So I think the likelihood is very high that it would be approved. Eduardo, very used to these acquisitions happening for companies to continue growth and customer value as agents in the Indian and other communities. What can we do to support this change? Great question. I actually think you're in a company with a growth mindset, both growth in terms of its size and scale, and growth in terms of constant improvement. Our goal is that the value proposition we provide to our realtors ought to get better every year. Some of that comes through scalable things, like our relationship to this larger network of at properties provides tools that we could not afford to create or buy on our own. I think keep doing what you're doing. I don't know how significant that is in terms of an answer to the what can we do to support this change. I think my answer is not much changes for you. Likely a year from now, the majority of you are going to say literally nothing changed. And so I think it's keep doing what you're doing, engage with each other, take care of your clients, do your daily habits, use platform. Hope that's helpful. Feel like I missed a raised hand. I'm currently at the bottom of the chat. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, go for it. Did anybody buy some Compass stock on Monday? It's going to make my day if somebody says yes. No. All right. Couple closing thoughts, and timing is good. The goal is to wrap up by 10. Number one, I've had a number of great conversations. I know our staff leadership, the other partners have as well since Monday evening. And I would just reiterate, under any circumstances, hey, please always reach out. But specifically under these circumstances, if questions come up, if you're Alex, I think your question was great. If you're in like a very specific industry related conversation where you're trying to be strategic, and you could use some help in thinking through, like, what can I say that is like true and authentic to us and me, but also helpful and strategic in the conversation. I love those conversations and more than happy to chat that through. So reach out to any of the staff people. Laura, Rosie, Ashley, Megan, and I spent a good amount of time the other day going over this. But we'd love to hear from you. I promise the questions aren't annoying. We love them. We love engaging with you about this stuff. So at any time, for sure, let us know. Lee has asked, do you think the @Properties brand will continue to grow market share, or do you think it will be hindered by this acquisition? Lee, do you mean in Chicago or do you mean elsewhere? Maybe you mean both.
Elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, I will speak more confidently in Indianapolis. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Look, y'all, this isn't meant to be a drag to any other company. So I want to be very clear. I'm just going to state you a couple facts. Here locally, Lee, yes, I am quite confident that the @Properties brand will continue to grow market share. From the start of 2024 until today, @Properties of Central Indiana has grown by 38 realtors net. Compass in Indianapolis has shrunk by 32 realtors net. I don't wake up in the morning, I promise you, setting a goal for the day for our company to do something better or whatever in comparison to another company. I believe comparison is the thief of joy. However, we believe that growing our company adds value to our people, particularly if we do it the right way. So we do wake up thinking about how can we grow in the right way with the right people to add value. And it's working. I'm really proud of our staff in that. Laura's done an incredible job this year. Rosie has brought those people in really, really well. We're not perfect, but I think we've done great. So yes, I am quite confident we will continue to grow market share. I can't speak for other affiliates. I don't know what their business plans are and their desire for growth. In Chicago, it's a different game when you're the #1 market share company. When you're like notably larger than everybody else, growing market share is very challenging. So they've kind of been battling growing market share for a long time, because once you get to way bigger than everybody else, that gets a lot harder. So I think TBD, Chicago. We're at 9:54. Y'all got 6 minutes left. This has been some great questions. Okay. Well, we really appreciate all of you. A lot of processing has happened in the last couple of days, I'm sure for many of you as well. We're as excited about the future as we've been. Nothing significant changes in our company. We're still thrilled with the relationship we've had with @Properties. I think it's been a good transaction, a good licensing agreement for both sides now for about 3.5 years. We look forward to continuing to get value from that, but I think most notably, we look forward to continuing to utilize that licensing agreement so that here locally, our partners and staff can dedicate as much of our energy as possible to human roles. That's what I think we're best at. So thank you all for joining. Don't hesitate to reach out about this. I know it's going to be in the news for a little while, but as the dust settles, if you have any questions, fire away. We'd love to chat about it. Everybody go and have a great Wednesday.